Did any of the following actually happen as described in these scary stories? Dogman versus Rougarou. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a story from my youth, which was many, many years ago. It's a true story, even if Snopes will not agree with that assertion. Officially, this didn't happen and couldn't happen, yet I was there, and I was a part of the time that the Loup Garou, or the Rougarou, met her match when she was confronted by the Michigan Dogman. I have a need to tell this story now because my days are running short. I don't know how much longer I will remain among you. Already my legs fail me and my eyes fog over. I know I will be entering the next world very shortly. My grandson is letting me finish my time on Earth in his home, hidden from the medical establishment who would torture me and rob all his money instead of allowing me to pass on with dignity. My ways are the old ways, and my story is a tale from the old times. I'll try to explain it using the language you understand. I'll try to tell the story in a way that makes sense to you. It is my hope that in this way, my story may live on through retelling by you and your generation, as well as the generations after you. If this is not to be the case, then I will be forgotten, and then I will be truly gone from this version of reality forever. Already, I care less and less about being remembered, and I feel more and more ready for whatever it is that comes next. This is a story about the Loup Garou, or the Rougarou, but it did not take place in Louisiana. It has nothing to do with New Orleans. That is not the only place that the Loup Garou exists. It exists everywhere on the planet. Nor is New Orleans the only place where it is called by that name. In Quebec, in Canada, where I am from, she is also called the Loup Garou or the Rougarou. My narrative starts up there, and it ends just north of your country, the United States of America. Let me go back to the beginning and tell it in order, while I am still able to tell stories about this plane of existence. When I was just short of becoming a man, just a month or two shy of my 18th birthday, my grandfather came to me in need of my assistance. A woman he had dated before marrying my grandmother, whom we could call Magda, had become a problem that needed to be dealt with. Although not from a family of witches, she had come under the tutelage of one, and in her old age, Magda had become bitter and vengeful. She had made the mistake of telling grandfather her plans to strike out at the world which had given her life, and to give back death instead. She had devised a plan to become a Loup Garou, and to unleash a great illness upon the land, turning as many others as possible into werewolves themselves. She meant to curse so many with the affliction that soon most of the population would be cursed themselves. In order for you to understand, I need to first explain to you how the Rougarou exists and how it propagates. A Rougarou, or werewolf, can be created in any number of ways. It can be a curse inflicted upon you by a witch like Magda using magic. This takes great effort on her part, and she can only turn a few in each year using this difficult and involved process. Even after cursing her enemy in such a way, the sentence only lasts 101 days before the person returns to normal. That's usually enough to destroy their life, however. By the time the Loup Garou becomes him or herself again, they've usually at the very least lost their job and their social standing. At worst, they may have torn apart and even eaten their loved ones and other members of their community. They may spend the rest of their days hunted, or imprisoned, or even put to death by the state. My grandfather's evil ex-girlfriend Magda did not hate just one person, though. She was so bitter, she hated the entire world. She wanted to ruin and destroy all of human society. She wanted all of us to be left with lives as empty and barren as her own. This is why Magda, according to my grandfather, had decided to become a Loup Garou herself. Why would she put such a curse on her own head? Well, she had nothing left to lose. She had no job. She had no social standing. She had been shunned her entire life because she was a human illness. She brought unhappiness to all who knew her. She brought ignorance where there should be learning. She brought hate where there should be love. Only the emotionally ill would want to be in her presence when she was young and beautiful, and nobody at all wanted to be with her as she grew older. Her plan, according to my grandfather, was to make herself the werewolf, and then to turn as many others as she could in the other way that one may be cursed and become a Loup Garou. She wanted to draw the blood of as many good men and women as she could manage. When a Loup Garou draws your blood, then you yourself will spend 101 days as the beast that walks like a man. You yourself will turn every man, woman, child, or animal that you draw the blood of into a cursed Rougarou. You yourself will become as cruel and empty as the evil Magda. When my grandfather approached me gravely and told me that he needed me to help him prevent a great sadness, I had no idea what I was about to get myself into. Grandfather had decided that he was the only one who could prevent Magda from destroying so many lives, but he was too elderly to be able to do the job himself. He needed me to be his legs and arms and strength, while he would provide the mind and the soul. Together, we were going to have to find a way to destroy the Rougarou before she was able to destroy so many others. I was trembling all over as we got into the pickup truck and drove to the old woman's home. I was not a rough kid or a tough kid. I was not the type who even hunted. I was a book-learning kind of kid. I didn't think I had it in me to destroy an old lady, and I certainly had no confidence in myself as assassin of an actual real-life werewolf. I had a feeling that grandfather and I were going to end up cursed, or we were going to end up even worse than that. When we arrived on the old witch's block, grandfather hurriedly signaled to me to drive the truck off the road behind some bushes. Already, something unexpected had happened. As we peered through the bush toward the house, the two of us watched as the evil Magda left, still in human form, and got into her old beat-up Chevy, beginning the long process of trying to start the engine. "She hasn't changed form yet," grandfather whispered to me. "Maybe she's changed her mind. We'll need to follow her and see where she's going." Neither of us wanted to do anything harmful to that crazy old woman just because she had threatened to turn herself into a Loup Garou. After all, maybe she was bragging. Maybe she was lying. Maybe she was only showing off for her old boyfriend, and she actually had no intention of harming anyone. Grandfather insisted we needed to follow far enough back that she wouldn't see us, and we needed to find out what her plan actually was. I drove the pickup after her, keeping well back and hoping she didn't notice us. I was behind the steering wheel, but I was not even licensed to drive at that point. I had been driving around the town for my family since I was 15, but I'd never taken a lesson, and I'd never been on a highway. When we saw the witch driving onto the freeway heading south, I balked and pulled off to the side of the road. Grandfather shouted that she was getting away, and I told him that he would need to drive if we were to continue. Furiously cursing me out, we got out of the pickup and switched seats. Grandfather called me all sorts of names, but it was better than getting in a car crash. I was just too nervous to pull out onto a highway in the middle of the night, but it was something I had never done before. On top of that, if we got pulled over, I didn't even possess a driver's license. I wanted to help grandfather, but I didn't really know if any of his assertions were real. Maybe this was just a crazy old lady. Maybe she was actually harmless. Was that worth me going to jail over? I didn't think so at the time. Speeding down the highway, Grandfather ordered me to keep my young eyes open for the old lady in the Chevy. When I saw her, we could tell that she was heading down in the direction of the United States of America. I pointed out to my grandfather that neither of us had passports. If his ex-girlfriend was indeed heading to the U.S., we were not going to be able to follow her. Why would she be going to the United States, he growled at me. Maybe she's heading to Toronto, but certainly no further than that. The night passed, and dawn came. We were still driving, but neither of us was fully awake any longer. I urged my grandfather to pull over and stop, but he said that he could not stop until the witch did, and so onward and onward we drove. When Toronto was already in the rear-view mirror, Grandfather began to agree with me. She was heading toward Michigan. It was then that he remembered she had always had a special hatred for Americans. That must be her plan, to become the Rougarou in the United States, to ruin the lives of as many Americans as possible. I asked him if we shouldn't try to stop her crossing the border, if we shouldn't try to deal with her while she was still in Canada. After all, once she crossed over, then we would have lost. Eventually, he began to see my point, and he admitted that I might be right. He seemed quite pained to admit this, and as for me, I really just wished I could go to sleep. It all seemed so absurd by this point. I had begun to think that my grandfather might be as crazy as the evil old Magda. I saw the woman pulling her Chevy into a gas station just north of London, Ontario, and urged Grandfather to follow her there. He did as I requested, pulling up behind the Chevy as it was being gassed up. We both got out of the pickup and stretched our legs. Grandfather took a step or two toward his ex-girlfriend, and I heard a scream, like something a banshee might emit. Screeching and screaming, the old lady popped out of her car and ran behind the gas station into the woods. "Come on," shouted Grandfather, and he ran after her into the pitch darkness. "And leave the pickup truck here?" I shouted incredulously. Grandfather just kept running. I locked the doors to follow him, but the gas station attendant insisted that I could not leave the car where it was. I shrugged my shoulders and ran after my elder while the man shouted behind me that he was going to call the cops. I apologized to him and kept running to catch up with the two crazy old folk who had caused this insanity to begin in the first place. When I caught up to Grandfather, I could see that it was already too late. There, in the clearing in front of us, was the old lady. But she wasn't the old lady any longer. She was down on all fours, and she was jerking violently, screeching in pain. Grandfather had not been crazy. That old lady really was trying to become a werewolf. "What do we do?" I asked my elder, and he didn't answer. I looked at him, and he was too stunned to react. In spite of us driving 12 hours, he still didn't believe that this was actually becoming real. I shook him, and his expression remained dull. He stuttered something about silver bullets and pulled a pistol out of his pocket. "Silver bullets?" I asked. "That's from the movies. I thought you had knowledge of these things. I thought you had a plan to defeat the Rougarou." Grandfather's hands shook almost as violently as the mutating witch on the ground in front of us, and instead of putting the silver cartridges into the chambers, he spilled them all over the ground. Even before she finished transforming, the witch's screams began to sound more like cackling. While still growing hair and changing form, she managed to stand up on her hind legs, although a bit unsteadily. She was now far taller than either of us, and she was baring her newly enlarged fang-like rows of teeth at us. It was too late. Instead of stopping her, we would now become her helpers. She would curse us to become Loup-Garou like her, and we would spread the disease for the next 101 days. We hadn't done anything to prevent her. We had more than failed. We had unwittingly become her accomplices. I could have run. I could have gone back to the gas station and tried to escape. My grandfather was frozen to his spot in fear, though, and he would not have been able to follow me. I looked around for a means of defense and grabbed a thick-looking tree branch off the ground. I would try to beat her back. It was the only option open to me to prevent the curse of the Rougarou from descending upon my family. The evil, cackling, werewolf woman took a faltering step in our direction, and then a second, more certain step. We were doomed, but I would make sure we didn't go down without a fight. Then, bursting through the foliage came an enraged, furious, feral kind of a dog. It ran on its hind legs, but it did not resemble the old Rougarou at all. It was a very tall canine, but it was a canine, like a black German shepherd standing bipedally, whereas the magical beast looked humanoid with long human-like arms and hand-like claws. This beast was an immense bipedal dog. This was not another Rougarou. This was a canine, but one the size of a bear. This had to be the Michigan Dogman, only a few miles north of the border. The Dogman howled into the sky, and I could hear other canines answering the call from almost all directions around us. Could he be calling more of them to where he was? The witch dog howled back, but before she could even finish, the Dogman was upon her. The Dogman snapped at the throat of the Rougarou, who responded by grabbing the canine's throat. The Dogman had no hands. He was an upright walking dog, so he tore away at her hands with his giant dog paws. The Rougarou was built for fighting, whereas the Dogman was built for the chase, built for speed. In close quarters, that old witch had every advantage over the Dogman, and I didn't see how this couldn't turn out badly. The Rougarou proved me right, as she literally threw the Dogman sideways into a tree, uprooting that tree on that side, and nearly knocking it over in the process. The Dogman was howling in pain, and as far as I could see, this fight was already over. Marching over, cackling a laugh that sent chills through me, the Rougarou approached, and she prepared to land her killing blow. Out of the woods came another of the Dogmen, and another. When they saw the situation, they both howled at the top of their lungs. Again, from all directions but far closer this time, came the return cries of the rest of their clan. It seemed that the Rougarou witch had not prepared for one eventuality, that she might be outnumbered by an entire family of the Michigan Dogman. We watched as the Dogman made mincemeat of the monstrous creature that had once been grandfather's lover. They treated her the way dogs treat their prey, and it was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. They were not just defeating her to devour her for nutrients. They took an extra effort to keep her alive for as long as they could. They expended great effort to make this a lesson that would last her through an infinity of reincarnations. The Dogman didn't just terminate her existence. They punished her. And then they punished her some more. This time, it was grandfather who woke me from my daze. It was long past time for us to go, before the Dogman finished their slaughter and turned to us for dessert. As we walked back to the gas station, the attendant resumed shouting at us. I paid him to fill up our tank, and that seemed to calm him down a great deal. It's your turn to drive, said grandfather, who promptly fell asleep in the passenger seat. I drove on through the morning until around noon, when I couldn't keep my eyes open any longer. I found a road in Kitchener to pull off the side of, and the two of us napped for a while. When we eventually got home, grandfather lit a candle and said something in the old language that I did not understand. He told me it was a prayer for the soul of the Rougarou, a prayer that she had learned her lesson and would not be punished any further for her evil. I was furious about this, feeling that she could never be punished enough for what she had done and the even worse things that she had intended. She was heading to Michigan to destroy the country of the United States. She had no redeeming qualities. She was the definition of evil, and nobody deserved more scorn and contempt than a person, no, than a monster, the likes of Magda. Grandfather shook his head calmly and allowed me to finish ranting. She asked for punishment, and punishment is what she got, he responded. I pray that she understands that now. I pray that she learned her lesson. If she hasn't, then she will only return to do more evil. Then our efforts, and the efforts of the Dogman clan, would all have been in vain. I didn't understand what he was saying while I was so exhausted and so stressed out, but months later, when the time came for Grandfather to cross over himself, it had all sunk in. At his funeral, I tried my best to remember exactly what he had said, and I used it as part of his eulogy. The point of punishment is not vengeance, because vengeance itself is something that one deserves punishment for. The point of punishment is to teach a lesson. If the lesson is learned, then evil has finally been defeated. Once evil is defeated, so is the urge for vengeance. And so I learned the difference between a Rougarou or werewolf and a Dogman. The Rougarou, she is evil, and she does evil things. The Dogman, on the other hand, is wild and feral. He does not seek vengeance, only justice. He strives to rid the world of evil. Yes, he is a danger to all living things, but he still functions as part of the natural world, and is ultimately to be forgiven by the Great Spirit for his violence. Only witches and people can be truly evil and truly unnatural. This is the lesson I wish to pass on to you before I leave this world for the next one, like my grandfather did. This is the lesson that I learned from the battle between Dogman versus Rougarou. We hope you liked that story, which was chosen by you guys in our recent poll. There will be a new poll tomorrow, so you can choose next Thursday's story too. And now I'd like to give a shout out to our executive producer of this episode, Bon Dinkley. We'd like to thank our EP Bon. He's a king like Genghis Khan. Bon Dinkley, he's badass, or so I thinkly. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer, Bon Dinkley the Moon Knight. He made this episode possible. In return, we send him links to see our weekly Sunday secret uncensored subscriber stories, far too wild to tell on this channel. If you'd like to become a Scary Stories NYC executive producer, just join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or else do what Bon Dinkley did and click the join link under this or any of our videos. Now here's PQ Ribber as Dr. Death to fill in the rest of the details. Doctor?
Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it. You can become a channel member by clicking the join link below. Then you can check our community page to find the links to 10 hours or more of secret, uncensored Dogman stories too wild to be told on this channel. Your other option is to join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. That's Peter's homemade club, where he will personally email you the links as well as occasional secret club messages. You may also be included as an executive producer in a future episode. Do you have a scary experience you want to tell us about? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, or else call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LESS-SCARY. The machine cuts off every few minutes, so if you have a long story, please keep calling back and we'll piece it together later on. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.